And welcome back. So now we're going to talk about PEST. Okay? PEST is, and it's also something that I don't think is necessarily universally agreed upon. You have different ways of saying it. You can call it PEST, PEST-L, and I've also seen just, okay? So what does all this stand for? Well, if you just do PEST, it's political, economic, social, and technological. Okay? If you do PEST-L, it's political, economic, social, technological, environmental, legal. And if you do PEST-L, like PEST-L, that's political, economic, social, technological, and legal. Okay? So the first would be political. What's in the political stuff? Well, it's the regulatory environment. It's the legal environment. It's also the political environment, obviously. So if you do just PEST, then you know the legal piece is in here with the political. Maybe I'll write that on there because legal is in there. Which acronym do you use, by the way? You use the one that your boss tells you to use, and you'll be darn glad to do it. All right, so you got the political piece. So what would be some variables that would come from the political piece? Well, think about environmental issues, current legislation in the home market, future legislation. Think about that. Any sort of international legislation, regulatory bodies and processes, governmental policies, government term and change. So, for example, if it's a Republican Senate versus being a Democratic Senate, that kind of that turnover. Trading policies. Funding grants and initiatives, home market pressure groups, international pressure groups. Okay? Any of these kinds of, and there also probably would be in a stakeholder map too, anything like this, any groups or any activities that have a regulatory, legal, or political nature. Okay? And that can be a person acting in a certain way, or it can just be issues endogenous to the environment. Okay? Of course, we also have economic. What do we have under economic? Well, macroeconomic trends, labor markets, international trade, banking and finance. Those are all kinds of variables that you'd want to consider when you're building scenarios. Let's give some examples. The home economy situation. Is the economy here good or bad? What are the trends in your home economy? How about overseas economies and trends? General taxation issues. Want to look at that? Taxation of products and services, increasing or decreasing. Seasonality and weather issues. Is it going to be a storm? Is it going to be a hot winter? A cold winter, hot summer, cold summer, that's important. Market trades and cycles, that's big. Specific industry factors, market routes and distribution, customer and end user drivers, also interest and exchange rates. Those are all very, very important. We also have social. Okay. What falls under social? Well, you've got demographics, lifestyles, social values, culture. So you got lifestyle trends, demographics that are changing. We talked about that a little already. Consumer attitudes and opinions. That's usually linked to culture. Views of the media, laws affecting social factors, company and brand image. That's huge. Customer buying patterns, fashion and role models. Major events and influences, buying access and trends, ethnic or religious factors, changes in that, and of course advertising and publicity. And then we've got our last one, that's technological. So that's new technologies, product or process, new applications, access, R&D policies, national competitors, R&D policies. You got competing technologies to your own. You got to deal with research funding, associated technologies, replacement technologies, technology that is mature and ready to be discarded, information and communications, consumer buying mechanisms, technology legislation, innovation potential, technology access and patents, and intellectual property issues. These are all things that you need to consider. So again, you use this the same way that you did with our kind of dynamic environment discussion. When you think you've done all your variables, come back and say, hey, did I actually cover this? Did I think about all these things or did I not? It's a good way to have a checklist because I can guarantee no matter how smart you are, you forgot something. And there is nothing more embarrassing than being in a meeting and having your boss or some colleague who's trying to climb their way to the top say, well, hey, you didn't remember that. And then you look foolish. Versus, I did remember that and I didn't choose that and here's why. Then you look like you made a choice and it's thoughtful and coherent and all that good stuff. So make sure you go through these when you're done. Okay, so right now we're going to end this particular video and we're going to go ahead and move into what you do with the variables and how you select them.